Hello everyone, and this is how to create a disintegration effect in Houdini. So this is technically an upgrade or an update to one of the earliest tutorials I ever made. Okay, so this is 7 years ago. Okay, so this was done in Houdini 13, and I decided I should upgrade it because it's fairly old and it does get difficult to follow. So this year I'm planning to upgrade some of my older tutorials, but I won't make any promises right now. Let's see how that works out. Okay, so this was the effect. Like originally what I had created was this. But now what we're going to make is something along these lines. So the initial steps are the same, but I've kind of thrown in a lot more of particles and stuff in there just to sort of make it a little more interesting. Okay, so to get started, there are 4 basic effects that are going on in here. Okay, you have the basic head that gets disintegrated. Okay, along with this, there is also like additional, like the polygons on the border, they also sort of extrude as they go along. And then you have like a particle emission, that goes along with this. And there are these additional particles which generate trails. So you have 4 things combined that sort of give you this overall effect. Okay, so to get started, I have a new file and I have the basic head in there. The head is from Modo. Okay, like there was a time I was learning Modo, so the basic head model is from there. But you can use anything that you want, like you can use a sphere or whatever. I won't make the head file available, but yeah, you can just pick up anything, like you can use the pig head as well. So what I need to do is the whole effect is essentially dependent upon a single gradient that is passing through my geometry. Okay, so if I look at this, this is the basic gradient that is affecting the whole thing. So the main thing is to generate this and then have everything else based upon that. So in order to do that, you get a new tool in Houdini 18 called Mask from Geometry. Okay, so if you press tab and you type in mask, you'll get something called Mask from Geometry. And what I want to do is I want to take a single sphere and I'll just come to the front view and we will place it on top over here. And all I want is, let's change this to polygon, and it should effectively just scale up. Okay, so I'll do alt click here. I'll come to say frame 100. Yeah, and just scale it up till it sort of envelopes, this guy. And then plug it into the mask from geometry. So what you should get is, see, you'll basically get this. Like that is, I think it's a little too far, or maybe just increase it. Yeah, okay, hold on. It should be just enough, like this is starting to already show up here. So just get it small enough that it doesn't, yeah, we don't want anything in the beginning. Yeah, okay, so this is good. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I want to sort of distort the edge. Okay, so one of the things we can also do here is if you want, you can sort of, just, make it a little sharper if you want to do that. But I want to distort this edge. So what I can do is, let's take an attribute warp. So this used to be called a warp swap. So if you ever watch an older tutorial, like before version 16, and if you hear the term warp swap, you're basically looking for an attribute warp. Yeah, so just connect this in here and we'll just call this a distort edge. And I'm going to bring in the mask. So just take a bind. So what the mask from geometry does is it generates an attribute called mask. So what you're seeing is essentially an attribute called mask. It's not generating color, but I can bring in the attribute. So I can just call it mask. And if I plug it into color, we should be able to see it. So there you go. See, so you basically have like a black and white value that's going through. But I want to generate just a red color. So, let's just work with that. Or we can re-output this back to mask, like that is fine as well. But for now, let's just take a vector to float. Or actually no, take a float to vector. And plug this into the first input. So we'll just get red. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to subtract this with a turbulent noise to sort of distort the edge. Okay, so just take a turbulent noise and we'll plug it into position and then take a subtract and then subtract it with this. See, so you'll get that. Okay, now increase the frequency and you can sort of modify the offset a little bit. I think I want to keep this fairly blended out like that. Yeah, see, so you get this. But what's happening is you still have these patches here. So what I can do is I can again sort of add back the original mask. So if I take an add and I add the original mask with this data, so what you'll get is, see, like this is happening just on the edge. But what this does is it's not a clamped value. So the addition is actually like now the mask value will go up to 2 instead of just 1. If you just want to be safe with that, what you can do is you can clamp it. So just take a clamp and put it in the middle. So what that will do is it will make sure that whatever values are jumping over 1 or going below 0 will get blocked out. Okay, but this is a nice see. So now what you're getting is you get like a nice, breakup like this. And if we want, we can just, we can take like, let's say original purlin and I can take a fit range and sort of adjust it a bit. Yeah, so there you go. So this is the basic effect that we want. So you can try out with different kinds of noise maps as well, like try and see what kind of different results you get. But yeah, this is the basic stuff. Okay, so this is step number 1. So if we want, what we can do is we can export this back out to the mask. Okay, so I can take a bind export and we can just type in mask and this information can again go back out to the mask. So if you don't want it in color, you can just, use this, which is like either ways is fine. Okay, so the next thing we want is we want to extract a border from this. Okay, so that we can define where the particles are going to emit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a sine function to extract the information. Okay, so take another attribute warp. We'll call this border. Okay, and this is fairly simple. Okay, so if we just take this and I can do a bind and bring in the existing mask. So I can just take a mask, just take a trigonometric function. So if I just connect the mask to the radian value, the RAD, and then connect this back to color. Okay, and then what you want to do is take the frequency, like I can change this to sine. Yeah. And then take the frequency and increase it till you start seeing a border. See, there you go. And so if I play this, you'll get a border. So this is the easiest way to generate a border, or extract a border from objects. And if it is causing an issue, you can play with the offset to sort of, adjust the result. Now, one of the things you need to remember is that the sine function doesn't work in 0 to 1. It works from -1 to +1. So if, again, like if you look at the geometry spreadsheet here, and you will see that the colors are going into negative. Okay, and that needs to be adjusted. So what you want to do is you want to take a clamp again. Okay, so sometimes it is like you have to remember those things. See, so now, whatever is going below 0, so if you don't have the clamp, you'll see like a lot of values are going negative. And this will cause problems, later on. Like when we're going to try and do a displace or something, these values can cause an issue. So just make sure that you clamp it. And then we can again do a bind export and export it back to mask. So I'm keeping it for color as well because it's just easy to visualize. But yeah, mostly we're just going to work with mask. Okay, so these two things are done. Okay, like we have our basic shape. And now let's prepare the geometry for, particle emission. So what I usually like to do is, rather than try and emit from an attribute, if I can use the attribute to delete geometry and just keep the area that I want, life becomes a lot simpler. Okay, so what you can do is just take a delete and plug this in here. Yeah, so what we can do now is we can use the mask to delete the geometry that we don't want. So let's try this, right? So I'll come to, you can do like, because we also have the color, you can use the color as well. So I can just do delete by expression and I can type in at mask less than 0.5 and see. So all you have left is we have this geometry left here. And that's perfect. So this is basically what we want. But before this, what I also want to do is I want to do a little bit of displacement. So what should happen is, like, as this, wherever this wave moves through, you get a little bit of displacement. So take, another warp. So we're going to work with a lot of attribute warps. Okay, let's call this displace. So none of it is too complicated. It's just, a series of steps that needs to be done. And we can just take a bind to import our mask. And I'll do displace along normal. So plug this into amount and this goes into position. And then just make it like really low. So what you'll get is C. And so our delete will also, like it'll have like a little bit of displacement on it. Okay, and as a final thing, I want this thing to have normals which will affect the velocity. Okay, so our particles will kind of get pushed out. So let's take a wrangle, and this is very simple. Okay, so just take a wrangle and all you need to do is take at v, which is the velocity. So small v is equal to at n. So what we have now is we have a velocity which is based on the normal direction. Okay, so this is the basic setup for, for our geometry. All right, so before we start with the particle emission, let's take care of the basic, geometry level effect. So what I want to do is I want two things. One is that the actual geometry should disappear over time. So this geometry, like as it moves through, it should disappear. And then this geometry that we have generated should sort of extrude as spikes, okay, as it goes down. So what I can do is, starting with this point itself, I can just split it out and we can take a delete and I'll just do an alt click here and bring this in. And we can delete based on the mask or the color. So I can just do delete by expression and we can, let's try at mask greater than 0.6. So you'll get this. And we can just check where my displacement is. See, so this is sort of like, it kind of borders the whole thing like that. Now, along with this, I also want it to displace a little bit. Okay, so I can just copy this displace itself. So do Control-C, Control-V, and I can copy this here. See, so you'll get like a slight bit of displacement as it goes out. See. Okay, now along with that, what I also want is that these polygons should sort of scale down as they, as they disappear. So we need to detach all the polygons. So we're going to take a facet and just detach everything and say unique point. So they will, detach. And then I also want the color or the mask data to go to primitive level. Okay, because this is on points, So it has to be on primitive level for it to affect polygon scaling. So I can take an attribute promote and we can plug it in here. And I'll say promote from point to primitive and put it to color. And then I can take a primitive SOP and I can just do transformation. I want uniform scaling, so I'm just going to connect all three. So I'll take the X scale, I'll do copy parameter, do paste relative reference and paste relative reference. And here, if we do at mask, this is what will happen. Okay, but we want the reverse of it, so we can try to do like a 1 minus. Okay, so what that will do is this. So you'll notice, like, if I turn this off, let's make the background a little lighter. So I'll make it light. Yeah, okay. So you'll see this. So as it comes down, it will start to eat up the whole thing. If you want to try something fancy, we can also try to do, like, which we are going to do for, the border anyways, but we can try that here as well, is before the facet, I can try to do a divide, and in the divide, there is an option called compute dual. And what that does is it gives you, hexagons. And if you do a divide, you don't need to do the attribute promote because it will automatically shift the point color to primitive color. So you can get rid of, like, you can bypass this guy, but the only difference now is that it will look, a little more interesting. So when he scales down, you'll get, like hexagons. So it looks a little more fancy. Okay, so this is the basic geometry disappearing. And then we want to do a similar thing here, but we want them to sort of extrude as they go out. Let's just take the delete here and make it 0.3. So I get like a little bit of a border, like I want a little bit of smoothing on the sides. And then let's also do one thing. I'm going to take a color and just, adjust it a little bit more. So I'll do a ramp from attribute and do CD. Or like we can try mask as well, Yeah, this should also be fine. And then just sort of, like take this and bring it in so it can fade out a little more. Okay, so we get like a nice little border on the whole thing. So this is good. And now a lot of it is going to be similar to what we've done here. So I can take the primitive and do Control-C, Control-V. And we can also take, like we can take all three of these actually. So Control-C, Control-V. And let me just see if this works. So if I take that, yeah, so what we should get is this. We might need to reverse it. Yeah, so just, yeah, okay. So we get like this nice little, hexagon effect going through. You can merge these two together to see what the final result looks like. See, so we're getting this. Now, one of the things we can do is if, let's say, the wave should start first, okay, and then it should start deleting, we can take a time shift and we can probably shift, the basic animation by like 1 frame. Okay, or let's push it ahead. So we'll do like +1. So what will happen is like the deleting happens first and you have like a secondary wave going behind it. See, so sort of like that. Now, along with this, what I want here is I also want it to extrude as it goes along. So the color is already at primitive level, which is fine. So I can take poly extrude and I can give it a little bit of extrude and I can come to local control and turn this on, okay, the distance scale, and I can just type it at CD and there you go. Okay, so it will be extruding based on the color. And we can also try to do an inset and see if that works. But yeah, the inset doesn't work because it's too close, so they're not really working. Let's try something else. Let's see if scaling works. Yeah, I think scaling is nice. So we'll get like a little bit of, you know, like if I come to the final result here, yeah, see, so that looks a little bit more interesting. And then let's try to give it some color. Okay, so I can take a color node here and let's try to set it to mask again. So we'll say ram from attribute and let me check where my attributes are. Okay, so we'll have to reshift the mask to point color. So take a promote. Yeah, so take an attribute promote and go from primitive to point, and we will take both of these back to point level. Okay, so the CD and the mask. And let's try to color it with mask and see what we get. Yeah, okay. And yeah, just, you know, push it in a little bit like that, you know, like the range value. And then let's make this sort of blue. But what I can do is I can push the value up. Okay, so make it like 2. And then we can try and push like another value here and yeah, no, that doesn't look very good. Okay, so fine, we'll keep it to blue. And then we can try to do the same thing here. So do Control C, Control V. And let's plug this in here. And let's increase this. Yeah. And we can just, you know, push in the black as well. Okay, so we'll get, yeah, so if we press play here, yeah, like if we want, we can try to give it a different color just to see if it looks a little more interesting. But yeah, there you go. So this is your basic effect.